This update report is for the Board of Governors of Marshall University and for our constituents of Marshall University. This update highlights the progress of the strategic initiatives that began in early 2006 that have guided and prioritized the development of Marshall University over the last 4.5 years. I'm going to report on the progress, the opportunities, and some of the challenges that Marshall University has confronted and will continue to confront in the future. I'm going to begin by talking about Marshall University as a major West Virginia economic engine. A recent economic impact study released in May 2010, which was commissioned by the Higher Education Policy Commission, features the impact of Marshall University during fiscal year 2008. The direct expenditures totaled $772 million, and the total economic impact of Marshall University in the state of West Virginia was $1.5 billion in business volume. Analyzing the underlying assumptions that comprise this study, this economic impact understates the true impact of Marshall University because it doesn't take into consideration some of the related elements of the university, like the physician practice plan, some of the elements of the foundation, and so on. So we believe that this understates, but yet is a very significant figure, and since 2005, the economic impact of Marshall University has tripled, which is a phenomenal metric to assess ourselves by. Every dollar the state legislature invests in Marshall University has returned at least $20 to the state economy. That value, that metric, is actually understated again for the reasons mentioned earlier. We think it's closer to 25 to 1. But the point is that it is a significant return for every dollar that taxpayers invest in the university. The employment numbers, approximately 2,000 faculty, total of 6,000 jobs. Are related to Marshall University, directly related, and that impact is very, very substantial in our region of the state. The economic activity generated is estimated at close to $290 million in employee compensation, which again is a huge economic driver in our region. The bottom line here is an issue that I think is very important for constituents of Marshall University and especially our elected officials to recognize. And that is that higher education is an economic multiplier. What that means is that for every tax dollar invested in the university returns many-fold value back to the state, both monetarily and otherwise, in terms of its overall economic impact. To put this in perspective, countries like Australia and New Zealand are now reporting that their fourth leading export is higher education in their nations. And it's a very important consideration as we look to the future of what the investment in public higher education here in West Virginia, especially at Marshall, can do for the state. Rather than looking at higher education costing the state money, higher education is actually generating financial resources for the state in ways that are analogous to other commodities that are traded and transacted in the state. Rather than looking at how we control and constrain higher education, we ought to be looking at how we develop higher education as an enterprise that can bring tremendous economic value and economic opportunity to the state of West Virginia. If we look at the so-called mobile student, which is both domestic and international, we should be looking at how we develop our public higher education institutions to serve a larger constituent base while assuring that we serve the residents and citizens of West Virginia. And that is exactly what we at Marshall University are doing. In our consideration of new program development, we are focusing on programs that are high demand, high impact programs that have the potential and the opportunity to differentiate Marshall University and to make Marshall University more of a destination university, not just for West Virginia students, but for domestic students from all across the nation and for international students across the globe. It's a matter of leveraging the investment that the state of West Virginia has made in the university, the investment that private benefactors have made in the university, the investments that the federal government has made in the university, and the key issue for us is how do we leverage and multiply those investments to produce the highest value return to the state, to the region, and to our nation in terms of economic impact. I think we're at the cusp of something that is really quite compelling at Marshall University, and that is looking at our university not only as a regional university, a state-assisted university, but a global university. And as we look ahead to the future, this is one of the major areas that we need to focus on developing. And it begins with having the kinds of programs that are in high demand, that bring students from all over the globe to the Marshall University campuses. And it's a matter of focusing on the high-quality faculty that are necessary and looking at how we open and unleash both the creative potential and the economic potential of this higher education institution, as well as others in the state, to help this state grow and develop economically. So I think it's, again, worth emphasizing that higher education is an economic multiplier. It is not a cost to the state. Looking at the various strategic initiatives, and this slide highlights the 10 strategic initiatives that we began with in early 2006. I'd like to report on the progress of each of these initiatives. The first one, which is revenue stabilization and enhancement, comprehensive plan for revenue stabilization enhancement, is perhaps the most important or compelling of these initiatives because as we look back to 2005, Marshall University was not by any means in the best financial shape. We have adopted a number of strategies that are listed here and highlighted here, ranging from enrollment growth to efforts to improve grants and contracts, commercialization efforts and new business development, state appropriations, and so on, and I'll go through each of these individually. As we look at freshman enrollment and overall enrollment, this slide demonstrates the condition of the university in 2006, where we reached a low point of freshman enrollment. These are full-time students. And then look at 2010, fall 2010, where we're predicting well above 2,000 full-time freshmen entering Marshall University. This is significant. And we expect this fall in 2010 that we will have record freshman full-time enrollment at Marshall University. And this has been part of an overall strategic plan to build enrollment, but do it in a manner that's managed and consistent with the capacity and capabilities of the university. If we compare the financial impact of just the freshman class of the difference in revenue using constant tuition dollars as assumptions, the magnitude of this difference is roughly $3.3 million, which is a substantial amount of lost revenue in 2006 and a substantial revenue gain in 2010. And it's helping us buffer what has been a very, very difficult and challenging economic climate over the last 2 years. So this strategy of growing enrollment and developing programs that are attracting new students, especially non-resident students, has been very timely indeed for the university. I can assure you that the university would not be in the kind of fiscal shape that it's in today had we not launched this initiative very successfully. Marshall University is very focused on improving retention, not only of freshman students from first to second year, but retention of students overall and improving graduation outcomes for our students. This fall, we will introduce an entire week of welcome for incoming students that will include pre-evaluation assessments where we want to look at the preparedness of our students, identify students who are at risk in certain areas, and begin early intervention strategies to improve their academic success and overall success in the first year. We have a one-stop advising or student resource center that's under construction and will open in August in our student center. We believe this particular location is optimal for greater and significant student utilization of this center to assist them both from an advising standpoint, but also focusing on their success. We implemented MapWorks, which is a survey instrument that periodically throughout the year assesses both the academic progress of students from the standpoint of their behaviors with regard to class attendance, the timeliness of completion of work for their courses, but it also assesses their social adjustment to the university in terms of various questions that give us insights as to whether the student is transitioning well as a freshman to the university. This information is becoming critically important for us in assessing the progress of students who might be at higher risk and helping us begin to introduce intervention programs that will help the students with their assimilation into the university and their success overall, both academically and socially. We will launch the electronic portfolio, or e-portfolio, this fall with our entering freshman class. This is an initiative that will enhance our ability to assess the work our students are doing. This is not done on an individualized basis, but is done through a data mining process. But as importantly, we will encourage students to begin to organize and include on their individualized e-portfolio their plan for success here at Marshall University. And that's a living document, if you will, as are all the documents on their e-portfolio site. Other institutions that have adopted this approach have discovered and reported that students who engage actively in their e-portfolio become more engaged as students. They take more ownership of the work they're producing and more pride in the work that they put on their e-portfolio. At the end, when they're graduating, the e-portfolio becomes a calling card for students seeking employment or wanting to move on with their education, because it can showcase the quality of the work that they've produced while here at Marshall University. And lastly, we will launch the Core Foundations program, which is our new general education program, focusing on the core domains of learning and thinking, and that program will be launched this fall and continue to develop over the next few years. And we believe that the core general education program will greatly enhance both the significance, meaning, and integration of general education into the majors. We have seen a period of about 35 years historically with public higher education where students today really can't identify the significance of general education in their overall learning experiences. For many, general education courses are simply courses to take and complete, and the students don't see a connection between that and the majors that they want to pursue. The foundational domains that we've identified in working with the faculty are the ones that are universal to all learning, regardless of discipline, and we feel that if we develop those foundational domains with our students during their first 2 years, they will not only be more connected to the learning experiences, but they will also see greater integration of that learning with their major. And we think that this approach, which was the approach in general education development historically prior to the 1970s, we think going back in that direction makes a lot of sense. Moving on to marketing. The university has improved its marketing portfolio. However, as you look through the slides and the appearance of the slides, we still believe that we need to develop a comprehensive overall marketing plan and strategies for improving the visibility of the university, but these have to be targeted to the various constituents specifically rather than having one size fits all. We don't believe that's the approach that will work for us. But this is an area that we feel we've made progress, but we're not where we need to be at this point. If we look at online, e-course online enrollment, both technology enhanced courses or T-courses and e-courses, the electronic courses, we've seen tremendous development over the last 5 or 6 years. We're seeing a little tailing effect in 2009-10, largely due to considerations that are internal to the university. We are looking at the ability of students to pursue degrees online, and we expect to roll those out in the next year. As we look at philanthropic giving, the university and the foundation have worked hand in glove to enhance overall giving, and as we look at participation by alumni, as we look at participation by faculty and staff, we see very positive signs, despite what has been a very devastating several years with regard to the state of the economy. It has had an impact nationally on overall philanthropic giving across the board. We've been able to weather that to a significant extent, but we recognize the need to revitalize our major gift giving program and to continue to work very hard to improve the endowment development of the university, which quite honestly is about at the 20-25% level of what it needs to be for the university. Grants and contracts, these are competitive funding awards at the university. We believe that we will top $48 million this year. We'd like to get over 50, but we'll see how the last quarter emerges when we get final data in. But as you can see, since fiscal year 2006 and 7, we have seen significant growth in competitive funding of research contracts here at Marshall University. These dollar amounts do not include any federal earmark funding that the university has received. So this is a very positive sign indeed, and is certainly a testament to the investments that have been made in physical infrastructure and resources to support research here at Marshall University. As we look at commercialization ventures, we have a number of new businesses that have been launched. I'll highlight the last three: Progenesis, Mist, and Orphogenics. These are very exciting new business ventures that have great potential to emerge as successful business ventures that come out of our research laboratories. We're very excited about it. In fact, the MIST, the Medical Information Systems Technology, LLC, was highlighted in the State Journal under 55 Good Things About West Virginia, so we're very proud of that. Looking at some alternative strategies for revenue stabilization and revenue enhancement, we have redefined scholarship eligibility, focusing on West Virginia resident students and reducing scholarship awards to non-resident students. When I first started at Marshall University, we were awarding the Presidential Scholarship to non-resident students if they met the minimum requirements. We have since modified that through the creation of the Border State Scholarship and through the Appalachian Scholarship, which awards non-resident students for their high school work with regard to success in the ACT and also their high school GPA. But we're no longer giving away full ride scholarships to non-resident students except through the Yeager Scholarship Program. We have gone through a process of rebalancing graduate fee waivers, indexing them to actual cost, and reducing the extent of a waiver with respect to the time and effort that the students are devoting. So we have achieved about a $600,000 to $800,000 savings and revenue generation as a result of that, and we expect to see that continue to grow. We have restructured summer sessions in a way that now produces net revenue in the summer. We were incurring about a $600,000 operating loss with summer sessions before we implemented this plan, and that had been historically the case for summer sessions. And in my opinion, there was no sense for us to be losing money in the summer when in fact there were opportunities to actually generate revenue in the summer. We have undertaken a number of operational efficiencies, including a comprehensive study of operational efficiencies at the university through utility, conservation, and efficiency measures born from replacing outmoded air handling systems, HVAC systems, and other inefficiencies due to older operating systems. We have gained significantly in terms of cost savings in our utilities and been able to blunt the impact of very significant utility increases and their effect on the bottom line of the university. We are engaged right now in a personnel study and looking at organizational restructuring. We are looking at release time for faculty. We are looking at the overall organizational makeup of the university, asking very critical questions about why we're structured the way we are, and is this the most efficient way for us to operate and provide the service platform that we need for our students and the constituents we serve. 2010 was the first year we had a multi-year budget developed and a budget plan. We presented a 3-year budget plan to the Board of Governors. Our ultimate goal is to get a 5-year plan developed. We've made great progress in that regard. It's very hard to anticipate using 1-year budgeting processes what the outlook is over 2 or 3 years or 5 years for that matter, unless we put our heads together and develop the plans. And clearly there are some underlying assumptions that make up this plan, but it's critical to have at least a 3-year horizon and preferably a 5-year horizon to look at what we're doing, what we're anticipating is going to happen with state funding, what's going to happen with other funding streams so that we can plan accordingly. We have put a sustainability committee together that's focusing on a green campus, a green university, and conservation measures, all of which are contributing immensely to economizing on what we do and being responsible both environmentally and socially in terms of what we do here at the university and reducing our overall footprint. As we examine the slide showing the appropriations per full-time equivalent West Virginia student, we notice a pattern that is somewhat disconcerting but certainly understandable with regard to the state's economy, the state revenues that are generated, and so on. It's more or less would be described as a sine wave that goes up and goes down and goes up and goes down, and it's indication that public higher education, since it's not an entitlement funding part of the state budget, oscillates with regard to available resources on the part of the state. And if we look at the green boxes in line, which is corrected for constant dollars using index to 2002 dollars, we can see that funding per West Virginia student has declined significantly by about $1,600 over the course of the last 10 or so years. Fiscal year 2012 is projected, but it's based on the estimate that we will receive a $5 million reduction to the university in state appropriations, not including the decline that we will also experience for our medical school. This pattern indicates that there's clearly a negative slope associated with per student funding. And as a result, the university has had to do and perform with a smaller and smaller resource base from state appropriations. There's a common misconception that the state provides the necessary funding for student education at Marshall University. The reality of it is that only about 25 to 27% of the actual cost of delivering the educational experiences for our students are covered by state appropriations. The remainder has to be earned by the university through tuition and fees, through grant support, through philanthropic funding, through other sources of revenue in order to be able to provide the kind of quality and caliber higher education experiences that we provide at Marshall University. Therefore, it's important that we take and examine the history to understand where we're at, to understand why tuition increases do occur, and the bottom line is there is a real cost to providing higher education experiences, both for undergraduate and graduate students. The portion that the state pays is very significant and important, no doubt. However, the gap between the real cost and what the state provides is the difference that needs to be made up by students and their families and other sources of revenue. And that's an ongoing challenge for Marshall University, as it is for any public university. The truth of the matter is we are increasingly operating more and more like private universities because of what we're dealing with economically. As we look at the net effects of the plan we put into place for revenue stabilization and enhancement, as mentioned earlier, we will see record fall enrollment of full-time freshman students, and we will see a very significant increase in overall enrollment at Marshall. The fiscal year 2011 budget plan that's been adopted by the Marshall University Board of Governors in its most recent meeting reflects a $3.4 million reduction in state funding, and that includes the reduction to the medical school. We will have $6.9 million revenue increase, and also redirected expenditures are factored into that, all of which have resulted from the strategies that we adopted for improving the fiscal posture of the university. New investments in people and programs will exceed $3.5 million for fiscal year 2011, which is very significant. And revenue estimates for this upcoming fiscal year are highly conservative, and that's simply how we budget here at Marshall University. One of the very important steps that we took in the fall of 2005 was the development of a 4-year engineering program at Marshall University. This was the result of thorough study on the part of the university and also an assessment of the need not only in the state but nationally for more engineers and more high-quality engineers. The accrediting body for engineering accreditation, RBED, reviewed our program last year and did a site visit in September of 2009. Since the accrediting board only meets once a year, we expect and have been informed we will receive their decision in 2010, September. We're looking forward eagerly to hearing their report and their final assessment of our accreditation status. This is a very important step for us because graduates of the program must graduate from an RBED accredited program in order to sit for the engineering licensure exam. In terms of advancing centers of excellence, which was one of our other strategic priorities, this timeline highlights the progress that we've made. The forensic science program, the master's program here at Marshall, ranks #1 in the country. We're very proud of that fact, and we'll be making further investments in the forensic science program and also introducing a new undergraduate major in forensic science, which we think is an important addition to the curriculum at Marshall. The School of Medicine ranks in the nation's top 20 in terms of social mission outcomes, and it has to do with rural placements and rural practice of graduates of the medical school and graduates serving in medically underserved areas of the nation and our state. That's exceedingly important. Also highlight that our game design program is listed among the top 50 in the nation. And so when we look at some of the centers of excellence, Rahal Transportation Institute's moving forward with a number of very important initiatives. I'll talk more about the Marshall Institute for Interdisciplinary Research, MIIR, but looking across the board, each of these centers of excellence has many things to be proud of, as does the university. The Marshall commitment was a focus on helping students develop their full potential, expanding their interests, and reach their educational goals in a timely manner. I've highlighted some of the things that we're doing with respect to the Marshall commitment. The first-year experience program will launch in the fall, in August. I mentioned the other elements that are listed here. This has been an initiative that has brought together the entire campus community around the needs of our students and the importance of their success and facilitating their success in all the things that we do. And whether it's dealing with financial aid issues, you'll notice in March 2009 we were working with Intuit on an electronic FAFSA form to assist students in the filling and completion of the FAFSA forms for financial aid, federal financial aid, to other foundational elements that we've been involved with. This has been an ongoing initiative that's made tremendous progress for the benefit of our students. As we look at developing and launching a high school STEM academy, this initiative is one that we have been pioneering, and our goal is to pilot and launch the Marshall, West Virginia Science, Technology, Engineering, Math STEM Academy. We want this to be a public academy. We believe that the conceptual framework should be framed around the academy serving as an experimental laboratory for enhancing student learning outcomes, especially in these critical areas of science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's critical that it be self-sustaining. And we'd like to be able to design the academy without having to conform to the conventional state code restrictions, traditional employment requirements, calendar, work, compensation, so on, that this truly needs to be an experimental pilot project for how we can improve high school education. And the focus should be on both scalable and transferable developments that can benefit high school public education throughout the state. And that's our commitment. Key to this, you'll notice in this timeline, in July 2010 will be the legislative special session. We are looking to permissive legislation or language that will help us establish the public academy. We're not necessarily advocating systemic comprehensive change across the state. If that can't be facilitated, we're looking for permissive language that will allow us to pursue this pilot project on behalf of the state, and hopefully that will happen. We'll have to see what happens in July. As we look at advanced research-based economic development and establishing the Marshall Institute for Interdisciplinary Research, we've made tremendous progress. This is a very unique institute from the standpoint that the researchers that are hired into the Research Institute are not tenure track. They're research scientists who work on performance-based employment agreements. Dr. Eric Kamech was brought in as the founding research scientist and director to lead this effort. We have since added 2 additional research scientists, and the progress in the development has been very significant. The funding is based on endowment-based support using proceeds from an endowment, and we had some initial startup funds that helped us get this project off the ground through a research grant from the state, and very pleased to see the progress that's been made here. We see tremendous opportunity for partnering with the private sector because the way we've designed this institute, the research scientists are not under pressure to publish their research findings. They're under pressure to generate grants and contracts that will continue to support and sustain the Research Institute. I want to highlight the progress in corporate liaisons because when you go back to 1980, the Bayh-Dole Act was passed with the strong intention of assisting federally funded university research to be able to commercialize that research and partner with the private sector, both in the development and commercialization of research-based not only discoveries but new business development. We have already signed an agreement with Integrated DNA Technologies, focusing on research dealing with genome regulation. We are in very intense conversations with Pfizer, focusing on gene modification. Alcon Laboratories is another private corporation that we're in conversations with. Diagnostic Hybrids out of Ohio, Sera Incorporated, and other corporations that are involved in gene diagnostics are currently under evaluation. This is perhaps one of the most significant advances that we've been able to make in the research sector here at Marshall University, is being able to create the connections or bridges with the private sector in a positive and productive way that benefits not only the private industry but also benefits the university and the state of West Virginia. MIIR has also entered into a successful collaboration with the Center for Nanobiosystems here at Marshall University, and we're very pleased to see that development. If we look at the timeline for the development, it's highlighted in this slide, a lot of very positive progress that's been made, and I think it's interesting to put in perspective that back in 2005 and early 2006, this initiative was looked upon as something that was probably impossible to successfully launch here in West Virginia, and we've certainly proven that not only can you do it, you can do it well. Focusing on developing new and high-demand academic programs, the university has really stepped up in this regard. Our faculty and faculty leaders, along with leadership in academic affairs provided by Dr. Gail Ormiston, has been tremendous. The Honors College has actually been formed. Dr. Mary Todd is the founding dean of that college, and we are finding that the Honors College, its existence and identity, is having a very positive impact on new student recruitment. We now have a Phi Kappa Phi honorary chapter at Marshall University, something we've not had before, and I look for great strides and progress in the development of this outstanding college. New degrees and undergraduate majors, to highlight some: physical therapy program, DPT or Doctorate in Physical Therapy. That is becoming entry level for the profession of physical therapy. We look at the summer of 2012 as the launch date. We have just hired the founding director. Very pleased at the quality and caliber of that individual, and we're very excited to have her begin this enterprise here at Marshall University. She'll begin with us in August this year. We are looking to develop computational science and informatics. That progress is underway. As I mentioned, we're reinvesting forensic science. We're looking at public health, both at the undergraduate and master's degree level. We see great synergies between the development of that program and our investment in geospatial information systems technology and research that we're doing in those areas. We're examining the feasibility of launching a PharmD program in a school of pharmacy, with great interest on behalf of our VA affiliates and other hospital partners, as well as chain drugstore relationships. I mentioned the new general education program, and at the same time we're doing this, we're eliminating low-performing and low-demand programs both at the undergraduate and graduate level here at Marshall. Infrastructure development and sustainability. We have currently at Marshall University, all campuses, about $500 million in physical plant value of infrastructure. Our deferred maintenance, actual defined deferred maintenance, cost projections are about $7 million. We have about $59 million in capital improvement and renewal projects that need to be done around the campus. To date, we have completed over $20 million in capital renovation projects since 2005 and added $180 million in new capital infrastructure since 2005, which is very, very important to the progress and development of this university, especially in terms of our efforts to improve our recruiting base and to increase enrollment here at Marshall University. Some of the upcoming events that I want to highlight here at the university: our relationship with Follett, who runs our bookstore. We celebrate our 15th anniversary, and through this relationship, $8 million in scholarships has been provided to Marshall students, which is very significant. This fall, we will launch a book rental program and make that available to our students in an effort to try to reduce total cost of attendance and make college education more affordable to our students. They will have the option to rent books rather than purchase books, and there's about a 50% cost savings that can be generated that way. We are hosting more conferences on campus than ever before. This June, we hosted the Geospatial Information Systems Conference for the state of West Virginia, and it was a very, very successful conference. In early July, we'll host the opening ceremonies for the United States Youth Soccer Region 1 Championships, all age levels here at Marshall, and we're very pleased and proud of that. Student Resource Center will open, as mentioned, in August 2010. The PGA Greenbrier Classic, Jim Justice, who's the owner of the Greenbrier, will help celebrate the relationships that the Greenbrier has with West Virginia University, Marshall University, and Virginia Tech University. And alumni badges are offered to folks that want to go and view the golf tournament at the Greenbrier, and it's quite an event. I will be in Washington, D.C. on July 21st at the museum in downtown Washington to deliver the State of the University address to our alumni and to our congressional representatives and elected officials there, and we're looking forward to that visit. The West Virginia Tech Connect Conference will be hosted at Marshall on September 7th. The Sustainability Summit will be hosted in September again by Marshall, and then September 10th we kick off the home football season with our clash with West Virginia University. In closing this discussion, I think it's very important to highlight some of the key factors that have contributed to the very substantial progress that's been made here at Marshall University in the last 5 years. I believe firmly that we as a university and we as leaders in this university are the manifestation of our expectations. We have set very high expectations for this university, and we have achieved very significant milestone developments at the university over the last 5 years. Had we set our expectations lower, we probably would be nowhere close to where we are today. So I'm a firm believer that we as individuals and we as a university, we as a community are the manifestation of our expectations, and I firmly believe in setting very high expectations. Priorities matter. When I first came to Marshall University 5 years ago, everybody was trying to put their issues at the forefront of being most important to the university without a sense of plan or direction as to where the university needed to go. We took hold of that challenge and established 10 strategic priorities for the university. They're the signature initiatives, and we have been focusing on developing and intensifying our efforts to achieve each one of those initiatives and putting those at the forefront where they needed to be because they're critical to the overall development and progress of the university. Planning matters. It goes with setting priorities. It's one thing to talk about priorities, it's another thing to do them. And the analogy to this is that vision without action is a daydream, and action without a vision is a nightmare. But when you put the two together, you see tremendous development and tremendous progress, and that's what we've done here in the last 5 years. But it's really critical that we plan well, we anticipate well, and we execute well. Leadership matters. When you look at what's needed today in this dynamic world, accelerating change, it's a matter of having a group of people who are committed to doing what's necessary to lead the development of the university. That begins, of course, with the Board of Governors and their commitment, the president, the leadership team at the senior levels, as well as at the faculty levels, the classified staff levels, non-classified staff, and so on. It's a team effort, and it's important that we lead, which is not just sitting around managing the status quo, and that's something we've moved away from. Teamwork matters. If you look at the progress that Marshall University's made, it isn't the result of any one person. It's the result of a team committed to the future of this university, future of this state, the future of our nation, and willingness to work together to make things happen in a positive and productive way. Relationships matter. There's no question when you look at what is critical to success. People matter and relationships matter. But those relationships really have to be focused on the priorities of the university, the planning of the university, and helping this university, this community, this state, this nation create and fulfill what I've always termed the promise of a better future. So the relationships are very critical, both community relationships, alumni relationships, political relationships, and so on. But it's very important that we're all focused on what matters most for this great university. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and your thoughtful comments on what has been a very energizing experience for me as president of this university. I celebrate at the end of this month of June my 5th year in this leadership role, and I can honestly tell you that it has been a sensational experience, one that's been very gratifying, and it's always interesting to see what happens when you put the needs of a university and the people that make up that university ahead of everything else, and you set good priorities, high-level priorities, make the commitment to achieve them, and then dedicate yourself to accomplishing what needs to be accomplished, what can happen in 5 short years. Again, thank you.